My name is Marlo. I'm 30 years old. I'm a respiratory therapist, the kind who spends 12-hour nights keeping people breathing while their families sleep in plastic chairs. And last Saturday, I walked into my own birthday party and realized it wasn't a party at all. It was an intervention with a PowerPoint. I knew something was wrong the second I opened the door to the event room at the Linden Hall. No balloons, no music, no smell of cake, just rows of chairs facing a long table like a town meeting. People I hadn't seen in years were already seated. My uncles, my mother's church friends, my cousins who only text when they need a favor. At least 60 faces turned toward me at once. Not one of them smiled. My adoptive father, Griffin, stood behind the table with a microphone in his hand. He looked polished, almost proud, like he'd dressed up for a ceremony. My adoptive mother, Rhiannon, sat beside him with a folder so thick it bowed in the middle. My sister, Holland, was off to the side holding her phone up at chest level recording. Of course she was. I froze in the doorway, the gift bag still in my hand. I'd brought them a framed photo from my nursing school graduation. Me in scrubs, eyes red from lack of sleep, but smiling anyway. The picture they never put on the wall. My heels clicked once, loud. Then the room swallowed sound again. Griffin didn't say surprise. He didn't say happy birthday. He lifted the microphone and said, "Marlo, sit." Something in me wanted to laugh. Because what else do you do when your life suddenly turns into a courtroom, and you're the only one who didn't get told? But my legs moved. I walked to the single chair placed in front of the table, facing everyone. A witness stand. That's exactly what it was. I sat down, the gift bag dangling from my fingers like evidence. I looked at Holland. "Why are you filming?" She didn't lower the phone. She just tilted it slightly, making sure my face was centered. Her mouth twitched like she was fighting a grin. "Just in case," she whispered. "In case of what?" I opened my mouth to ask, but Griffin spoke first. His voice filled the room like a sermon. "Tonight is about truth." Rhiannon slid the heavy folder onto the table with both hands, like she was presenting a body. My stomach went cold. "What is this?" Griffin didn't answer me. He looked past me, into the crowd, scanning faces like he was counting votes. "We have all gathered," he announced, "because there has been deception in this family." A murmur ran through the chairs. Small, eager, poisonous. I turned, searching for one friendly expression, one cousin willing to look embarrassed for being here. Nothing. People stared at me the way they stare at the person being escorted out of a restaurant. I felt the old reflex rise, the one I'd trained into myself since childhood. Stay calm. Don't react. If you're useful, they might keep you. I hated that reflex, and yet it steadied my spine. Griffin opened the folder and pulled out the first paper. "Marlo, you were brought into our home when you were an infant." I blinked. "I know. We took you in," Rhiannon cut in, sharp. "We fed you. We clothed you. We paid for braces and field trips and that little college apartment you pretended you paid for yourself." My throat tightened. "I paid my way. I worked. I took out loans." Rhiannon smiled without warmth. "And who co-signed those loans? Who provided the address? Who made you credible?" I looked at Griffin. "What is happening?" He raised another paper higher so everyone could see. "We have documentation," he said, "that you are not legally ours." The words didn't land at first. Not because I didn't understand them, but because they didn't match any memory I had. I'd grown up under their roof. Their last name on my school forms, their rules, their shame, their praise rationed like medicine. "Excuse me," I managed. Rhiannon leaned forward. "Your adoption was never finalized." A low sound went through the room. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." My ears rang. "That's not possible." Griffin's eyes stayed calm. Too calm. The calm of someone who practiced in the mirror. "It's very possible," he said. "And it means you have been living under our name, benefiting from our reputation while contributing nothing but resentment." I heard myself inhale, shaky. Contributing nothing. For 7 years, I'd sent money every month because Rhiannon always found a reason. The church roof. Griffin's health scare. Holland's tuition that mysteriously never ended. I'd worked extra shifts through COVID, sweat pooling under my mask while families screamed at me in hallways, and I still sent the money because they said, family helps family. And now, they were looking at me like I'd robbed them. My hands clenched on my knees. "Why are you telling me this on my birthday?" That's when Griffin lifted the next sheet of paper. It had a bold header and a neat line of numbers. Accounting of expendituras. I saw line items. Rent, food, school supplies, medical, emotional labor, actually typed out like it was a bill. At the bottom, A total so large my brain tried to reject it. Griffin announced it like a verdict. $287,000. My mouth went dry. What? Rhiannon's voice sharpened, louder now, enjoying the attention. That is what it cost us. And since you were never legally ours, and since you have chosen to turn your back on this family, you will pay it back. My vision tunneled. I stared at the number, then at Griffin, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for Holland to jump out and laugh. Waiting for anyone to say, this is a joke. Nobody did. Holland's phone stayed, pointed at my face. The little red recording light glowed like a tiny wound. Hold up. Small pause. I'm human, and editing these can get lonely. Your comments are my proof that these stories reach real people. Like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. All right, back to it. My voice came out thin. So, you invited everyone here to demand money from me. Griffin didn't blink. We invited witnesses, he said. To keep this clean, to keep this honest. Honest, I repeated, and something bitter cracked open inside me. You're telling me my adoption was never finalized, and you waited until I turned 30 to mention it. Rhiannon's eyes flashed. Don't act like a victim. I actually laughed then. A small sound. Uncontrolled. It startled even me. Griffin tapped the microphone. We will not be disrespected in front of our community. Our community? The phrase made me want to vomit, because I could already feel it happening. The story being built in real time. Them as saints. Me as the ungrateful girl who used them and walked away. I forced my breathing into the steady rhythm I use at work when alarms scream. In, out, in, out. What do you want from me? I asked. Griffin slid a document across the table. A signature, a repayment agreement. We have already drawn it up. The paper landed in front of me, crisp, official, with a notary stamp at the bottom. Rhiannon added, casual like she was asking me to pass the salt. And your car keys. I frowned. What? She held her hand out. Your car was purchased while you lived under our roof, using our address, with insurance under our policy. Technically, it's tied to this household. That's not true, I said, but my voice shook now, anger rising. I bought that car, I make the payments. I have the loan. Griffin leaned into the mic. We can freeze it. We can make things difficult. Don't force us. I looked at the crowd again. People watched like spectators at a boxing match. My aunt's lips pressed together, but she didn't speak. My cousins stared at the floor, suddenly fascinated by carpet. Nobody moved. Holland's phone shifted closer. Say something, she hissed under her breath, eyes bright. This is insane. I turned my head slowly. Are you enjoying this? Her smile slipped, just for a second, then returned harder. I'm documenting, she said. People love family accountability. Accountability. I tasted the word like rust. Griffin said, sign, Marlo, or we move forward legally. Legally, I echoed again. And that's when my eyes snagged on the notary stamp. The date was last month, not years ago, not some forgotten paperwork from my infancy. Last month, my heart thudded once heavy. They didn't just discover something old, they planned something new. I reached forward and pulled the document closer, slowly, so no one could accuse me of being dramatic. I studied the header. The language was aggressive, strange, almost desperate. Repayment, restitution, confession of benefit, confession. Rhiannon watched me read with a tight smile. Don't pretend you understand legal documents, she snapped. Just sign. That made me look up. Why the rush? Griffin's jaw tightened. Because it needs to be done. Needs to be done before what? I asked. His eyes flicked, just once, toward the back of the room. I followed his glance, and that's when I saw him. A man standing near the exit, half in shadow, like he'd arrived late and decided not to interrupt. He wore a dark coat and didn't blend with the church-polished crowd. His posture was straight, still. Not curious. Not entertained. Watching. Beside him stood another person. A tall guy with a briefcase and a calm face. The kind of calm that comes from knowing the rules. Something in my chest tightened, instinctive. I didn't recognize either of them, but they didn't look like family. They looked like consequences. I pointed without meaning to. Who are they? Griffin's grip on the microphone tightened so hard his knuckles whitened. No one, he said too quickly. Do not get distracted. But the man by the exit took one slow step forward, and my father, Griffin, actually flinched. The room felt like it tipped. Like a stage set shifting under my feet. Rhiannon's voice went sharp, almost panicked. Marlo, stop looking around and sign the paper. I stared at Griffin. Why are you scared? He leaned forward, voice low now, meant only for me. Because you're about to ruin everything if you don't do what you're told. Ruin everything. My skin went cold. What did you do? Before he could answer, the man near the exit finally spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room anyway, like it was trained to. "Mr. and Mrs. Holloway," he said, calm and clear. "This is an illegal coercion." The room erupted in whispers. Griffin's head snapped toward him. Rhiannon's face drained of color so fast it looked painted on. I felt my own voice leave my body in a whisper. "Holloway, that wasn't our last name. That wasn't my last name." The man took another step forward, and the guy with the briefcase opened it with a soft click. "Ms. Marlowe," the man said, eyes fixed on me now, and something in his expression softened, almost like regret. "I'm sorry this is how you're learning, but you were never supposed to be here tonight." Griffin slammed the microphone down on the table so hard it popped with feedback. "Get out," he snapped, voice cracking. "This is private." The man didn't move. "Not anymore," he said. "Not when there's a trust involved." A trust, that word hit me like a pressure change in my ears. I stared at Griffin, at Rhiannon, at Holland, still filming with trembling hands now. And then I looked back at the stranger, because he was staring at me like he'd been trying to find me for years. He reached into his coat slowly and pulled out a thin envelope. Old, cream-colored, sealed. "This," he said, "was written for you." My fingers went numb. Griffin's voice went hoarse. "Don't you dare." The man held the envelope higher, so the crowd could see the handwriting on the front. "To my daughter." I couldn't breathe, because the handwriting wasn't Griffin's, and it was Rhiannon's. It was a woman's, elegant and slanted, like a signature on something expensive. The man's eyes stayed on mine. "Your mother didn't abandon you, Marlowe," he said quietly. "They took you." The room did not breathe for a full 2 seconds. It felt like the air itself was waiting to see what I would do. My hands were still on the table, fingertips pressed into the wood, because if I let go, I thought I might float off into some numb place where none of this could touch me. Rhiannon's chair scraped back so hard it squealed. "This is a lie," she snapped, voice too high. "This is harassment. Griffin, call the police." Holland's phone wobbled. I watched her eyes flick between the stranger and me, not sure if she should keep filming or run. The red light was still on. Her audience was still getting every second. Griffin stepped toward the man like he could intimidate him by sheer posture. "Who are you?" he demanded. "And why are you in my family's business?" The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff up. He just opened his palm, showing the envelope like it weighed something heavier than paper. "My name is Sterling Callahan," he said, and then he nodded toward the guy with the briefcase. "This is Reed Dawson. We represent the estate of Catherine Hale." My stomach dropped so fast my vision flashed. Estate. Mother. The word mother in my head did not feel warm. It felt like a door I had spent my whole life leaning against, and suddenly someone on the other side had turned the knob. Rhiannon's lips parted, then pressed together tight. Not denial, not confusion, recognition, which meant they knew that name. I stared at her. "You know her." She looked away, not even toward the crowd, toward the floor like the carpet could protect her. Sterling's gaze returned to me. "Ms. Marlowe, you are the named beneficiary of a private trust. It becomes accessible on your 30th birthday." He glanced around the room, letting the weight land on every listening ear. "Today." A low sound rose from the chairs, a chorus of sudden interest. Not concern for me, interest in money. I felt my throat tighten. "A trust," I repeated almost stupidly. "I'm a respiratory therapist, I don't have trusts." "You do," Sterling said. "You have for your entire life, and there are conditions. One of those conditions is that you are informed of your identity by a certain date. Another is that no one may coerce you into signing your rights away." Reed opened the briefcase and slid a stack of documents onto the table with a clean, controlled motion. The papers were clipped, labeled, professional. The kind of paperwork that makes people like Griffin nervous, because it speaks a language they can't bully. Griffin's face went red. "You can't barge in here and accuse us of coercion. She is an adult. She can sign whatever she wants." Sterling's eyes flicked down to the repayment agreement in front of me. "And yet," he said, "you invited 60 witnesses, took her keys, threatened her employment, and attempted to have her sign a confession of debt on the day her trust becomes active." The word confession hit my spine like ice. I looked at the document again, really looked. It wasn't just repayment. It was a narrative. A statement that I had benefited, that I had obligations, that I acknowledged them. A neat little trap that would make me look greedy if I resisted later. Rhiannon's voice cracked. "She owes us. She owes us for everything. She thinks because she has a job she's better than us." My mouth opened, but what came out wasn't a defense. It was a question that burned. "Why didn't you finalize the adoption?" The room went quiet again, a different kind of quiet. People leaned forward, hungry. Griffin's jaw pulsed. Because, he said slowly, we didn't need to. You were in our house. You had our name. We raised you. That's not an answer, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. If you raised me, why not make it legal? Rhiannon's eyes snapped to mine, wild. Because your mother's family wanted it that way. Sterling's gaze sharpened. That is correct, he said. The arrangement required that you remain under the Holloway's guardianship without formal adoption, so that your inheritance could not be touched. Guardianship, arrangement, inheritance. My stomach twisted. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a memory I didn't own. I turned to Griffin. An arrangement, you were getting paid. Griffin slammed his palm on the table. We spent money on you. Sterling didn't flinch. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thin folder of his own, then set it beside Reed's stack. You received money, he corrected. Consistently. Rhiannon's face went pale in a way makeup cannot hide. She rose halfway from her chair, then sat back down like her knees had forgotten how to work. Sterling slid a single paper toward the nearest uncle in the first row. Wire receipts, monthly transfers, every month for 29 years, paid from a private account, withdrawn in cash under Mrs. Holloway's signature. Uncle Barrett, the loud one, picked it up with thick fingers and squinted. His eyebrows climbed. This is real, he muttered. Aunt Sloane leaned in to see, her mouth already forming a judgment. So you were getting money, she said, not to them, but to the room, as if announcing whether. Griffin's voice shook. That money was to support the household. It wasn't to buy her love. I felt something snap inside me at the word love. You never tried to, I said softly. Rhiannon's eyes flashed, anger and fear mixing into something ugly. You don't get to rewrite history, she hissed. You had a roof, you had food, you had a family, you always wanted more. I stared at her, and my mind did the thing it does in emergencies. It zoomed in on detail. The way her hands shook. The way Griffin kept glancing toward the exit like he was calculating how fast he could get out. The way Holland's camera was still up, but her face had gone tight, like she finally understood this wasn't a cute storyline. Sterling looked down at me. Ms. Marlowe, I need to ask you directly. Did they tell you this was a birthday party? Yes, I whispered. They said it was a surprise. And did they tell you your adoption was incomplete? No. And did they tell you about Catherine Hale? My throat burned. No. He nodded once like he'd expected that. Then he looked at Griffin and Rhiannon. That is a breach. Griffin's eyes went sharp. Breach of what? Reed finally spoke, voice low and firm. Breach of contract. The word contract turned the room into motion. People shifted, whispering louder. Phones rose. Someone in the back laughed nervously, not because it was funny, because they were uncomfortable and didn't know what to do with discomfort. Holland's voice sliced through it. Wait, she said, suddenly breathless. So there's money, like real money. I turned my head slowly toward her. She was still filming, but now she wasn't filming my humiliation. She was filming her opportunity. Something bitter rose in my chest. Put the phone down, I said. Her eyes flicked to mine, and for the first time all night she looked unsure. I'm just documenting, she mumbled. No, I said, my voice calm in a way that scared even me. You're feeding. Sterling cleared his throat gently, like he was trying to keep this from becoming a brawl. Ms. Marlowe, you do not need to sign anything tonight. You are entitled to private counsel. You are entitled to time. You are entitled to the letter in that envelope. The envelope. I had forgotten it was there, hovering between my life and whatever was waiting behind it. My fingers reached out before my brain caught up. Sterling handed it to me carefully, like he was passing a fragile instrument. The paper was thick, the seal unbroken. My name written in a graceful slant. To Marlowe, not to Holloway, not to Patterson, just Marlowe. Like whoever wrote it wanted me to be free of borrowed names. Rhiannon saw the envelope and made a strangled sound. Don't, she whispered. Don't read it here. I looked at her. Why not? Her eyes darted to the crowd. Because you'll embarrass us. There it was, not regret, not remorse, just panic about optics. I held the envelope tighter. You already did. Griffin leaned toward me, dropping his voice, trying to reclaim control with intimacy. Marlowe, he said, listen. These men are not your family. They don't know what it took to raise you. They don't know how difficult you were, how cold you could be. Difficult, cold. The labels they'd pasted on me whenever I asked for basic kindness. I met his eyes and I didn't feel the old fear. I felt something new. Clarity. I was cold, I said quietly. Because you taught me warmth was something I had to earn. Rhiannon's mouth opened, then closed. She looked like she wanted to slap me and hug me at the same time, But she didn't truly want either. She just wanted silence. Sterling watched me, patient. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't selling me a fantasy. He was giving me space to choose. So I chose. I stood up slowly, with the envelope in one hand and the repayment agreement still on the table like a dead thing. My legs trembled, but I stood anyway. Then I looked at the room, all those faces, all those people who came to watch. This, I said, and my voice carried farther than I expected, was supposed to be my birthday. Nobody spoke. I glanced at Holland. Turn it off, I said again, and this time there was no softness. If you don't, I'm leaving and you can film the backs of everyone's heads while they pretend they didn't know. Her cheeks flushed. Her follower brain fought for one more second, then her thumb tapped the screen. The red light vanished. The silence that followed was almost holy. Sterling nodded toward the door. Ms. Marlowe, if you'd like, we can step outside. We can talk privately. No audience. Rhiannon shot to her feet. You can't just take her, she snapped, voice breaking. She's ours. The word ours made my stomach twist. I turned to her, and it felt like speaking through years of swallowed air. I am not property, I said. Not yours, not theirs, not anyone's. Griffin's face cracked for a second, just a thin fracture of fear. If you walk out, he said, don't come back. I held his gaze and nodded once. Good. Then I walked past the table, past the witnesses, past the chair that had been placed to shrink me. Sterling and Reed fell into step beside me, not touching, not crowding, just there. Professional, steady. Behind me, the room erupted in noise. Not shouting yet. Confused voices rising, people demanding explanations, someone calling my name like they'd suddenly remembered I was a person. But I didn't turn around. At the doorway, I felt Rhiannon rush close, fast and desperate. Marlowe, she hissed, grabbing my sleeve. If you do this, you'll destroy this family. I looked down at her hand on my arm, the same arm she'd used to take what she wanted from me for years. Money, silence, loyalty. Then I lifted my eyes to hers. You already did, I said, and I gently removed her fingers one by one. Outside, the night air hit my face like a slap. Cold, clean, real, my lungs filled. For the first time in that room, I could breathe. Sterling gestured toward a car parked under the streetlight. We can drive you somewhere quiet, he said. Or we can just stand here until you feel steady. I swallowed hard, staring at the envelope in my hand like it might burst into flames. If I open this, I whispered, everything changes. Sterling's voice softened. Everything already changed. This just tells you why. My hands shook as I slid a finger under the seal. And right before I pulled it open, the restaurant door behind us flew wide. Griffin stormed out, face twisted with rage, and in his hand was my car key fob, held high like a trophy. You want to leave, he shouted into the night. You're leaving on foot. Griffin's shout bounced off the brick buildings and the parked cars. And for a second I just stared at him, stunned by how comfortable he was making a spectacle of me in public. He held my key fob up higher, like the air itself would applaud. You want to leave, he yelled again. You're leaving on foot. My hands were still shaking from the envelope. The seal was half lifted, the paper inside barely visible. My heart was pounding so loud I could feel it in my throat. And yet, something strange happened. I didn't panic, because the moment he did that, he wasn't threatening me anymore. He was proving Sterling's point. Out loud, in front of everyone. He was showing what control looked like when it lost its mask. Sterling didn't raise his voice. He simply turned his head toward Griffin and said, "That is theft." Griffin scoffed, trying to laugh it off. "It's my household's insurance, my household." Reed stepped forward and finally opened his mouth again. "The vehicle is registered to Marlowe," he said, calm, certain. "We pulled the record before we came. The loan is in her name. The insurance is in her name. The only reason your address appears anywhere is because you used it without her consent for years." That last sentence made Griffin's posture wobble. A small wobble. The kind you only notice when you've spent your whole life watching people try to look bigger than they are. My mouth went dry. Used it without my consent for what? Rhiannon stumbled out the door behind him, face tight with fury. "Don't listen to them," she snapped at me. "They're twisting things." Sterling didn't look at her. He looked at me. "Ms. Marlowe," he said gently, "do you have a spare key?" I blinked, caught off guard by the normalness of the question. "No, I never needed one." "Then we will handle this," he said, and he pulled his phone out with the same calm he'd had in the room. Not dramatic, not loud, just efficient. Rhiannon's eyes widened. "Are you calling the police on us? On your parents?" I stared at her. "You just tried to force me to sign away my life in front of 60 people." She hissed, voice low now, like she was trying to drag me back into private shame. We did what we had to do. That phrase hit me like a memory. We did what we had to do. The line she used every time she chose Holland over me. Every time she justified cruelty as necessity. I looked past them to the restaurant doors, now half open, with faces peeking out. People were coming outside. Phones were up again, but this time the camera wasn't centered on me. It was centered on Griffin waving my keys like a prize. Sterling spoke into his phone quietly. Yes, I need an officer dispatched. We have a dispute involving property. An adult woman's vehicle keys are being withheld. There is a coercion component. Pause. Yes, the location is Linden Hall. Private event entrance. Griffin's face purpled. You can't do that. Sterling didn't even glance at him. I can, he said, and then he lowered the phone. I swallowed, staring at Griffin. Give me my keys. He held them tighter. After everything we did for you, after everything you took from me, I corrected. Rhiannon stepped forward, hands clenched. We took you when no one else wanted you. Sterling's gaze snapped to her. His voice stayed flat. That statement is false and you know it. Rhiannon's eyes flashed. You don't know what you're talking about. Sterling's jaw tightened slightly, as if he'd been holding back something for years. I know exactly what I'm talking about, he said, because Catherine wrote down every detail. Catherine, the name made my stomach ache. I looked down at the envelope in my hand. My thumb pressed against the paper like it could keep me from falling apart. Griffin took one step toward Sterling. You're not walking away with her, he said. She's confused. I turned toward him and my voice came out quieter than his, but sharper. No, I said. I'm awake. Holland suddenly pushed through the cluster at the doorway. Her hair was messy, her eyes bright in that hungry way I'd seen when she smelled attention. She looked at Sterling, then at me. Wait, she blurted. So if there's a trust, does that mean like millions? I stared at her, disbelief turning into something colder. That's what you care about. She shrugged like it was obvious. I mean, it matters. People are going to be asking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap her phone out of her hand, even though the stream was off. I wanted to tell her everything I'd swallowed for 30 years. But instead, I did the one thing that hurt her more. I looked at her like she was nothing, not in a cruel way, in a final way. Her face flickered, confused. She had never been invisible in this family. She didn't know how to exist without being seen. Reed leaned slightly toward me. There is a quieter option, he said softly. We can leave right now. You can read the letter somewhere safe. The police can handle the keys if necessary. Griffin barked a laugh. Handle the keys over what? She's being dramatic. Sterling's eyes didn't leave Griffin's face. You staged a public humiliation, he said, and his voice was calm in the way a judge is calm. You demanded repayment for expenses you were reimbursed for. You threatened her job. You attempted to have her sign a confession. Now you're withholding her property. That is not drama. That is a pattern. The word pattern made my throat tighten. Because that's what it was. Not one bad night. Not one misunderstanding. A pattern that had trained me to shrink. A car pulled up slowly, lights washing over us. Not the police yet. Just a rideshare dropping someone off, but it made everyone flinch like guilt has a nervous system. I took a breath. Then I made a decision. I stepped forward until I was close enough to Griffin that I could see the little burst capillaries in his eyes. Give me my keys, I said again. Now, his jaw worked. He looked at the gathering crowd, looked at Sterling, looked at Reed, looked at the restaurant door where people were watching like this was a free show. Then, finally, he shoved the key fob toward me with a violent little motion, like he wanted it to hurt my palm. It didn't. I took it carefully and slid it into my purse, slow and deliberate, so everyone could see I wasn't grabbing. I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming. Rhiannon's voice broke, sharp and high. You're choosing strangers over us. I turned to her. No, I said. I'm choosing truth over performance. Sterling gestured toward the car under the streetlight. When you're ready, he said. I walked to my Honda, hands still trembling. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. Reed opened the passenger door and stepped back, giving me space like I was something that could fracture. Before I got in, I looked over my shoulder at the family I'd spent my life trying to win. They didn't look like victims. They looked like people caught. And it hit me, hard, that the only reason they were screaming now was because the story had slipped out of their control. I got into the car, closed the door. The sound was soft, but it felt like a lock clicking on a chapter of my life. Sterling sat in the back seat. Reed stayed outside, still scanning the sidewalk, speaking quietly into his phone again. He wasn't panicking. He was documenting. My hands shook so badly, I had to set the envelope on my lap and press my palms against my thighs. Sterling's voice came from behind me, steady. "You can take your time." I swallowed. "What if I don't like what it says?" He exhaled slowly. "Then you do like it, but you'll finally know it." I slid my finger under the seal and opened it fully. The paper inside was folded neatly, once, twice. The handwriting was elegant and slanted, and my stomach twisted with an ache I couldn't name because it felt familiar without being known. I unfolded it, and I read, "My dearest Marlowe, if this is in your hands, then you are 30. I am not there to see your face, and that is the greatest grief of my life. I want you to hear this first, before you hear anything else from anyone. You were wanted. You were loved. You were planned for with a care so fierce it kept me awake at night. I am Catherine Hale. I am your mother. When I was pregnant with you, my family did what powerful families do when they fear shame. They tried to erase the problem instead of loving the child. They threatened me. They cornered me. They offered deals like love could be bought and sold. I refused to give you away at first. I fought. Then I got sick. And the kind of sickness I had turns the world into a countdown. I made choices I hate. I made bargains I never wanted to make. I chose the Holloways because my family insisted on them, because they were close enough to watch, and because they agreed to terms I demanded. You would be provided for. You would be safe. You would be educated. You would have your own money that no one could touch. And when you were old enough, you would be told who you are. If they failed you, if they used you, if they tried to bind you to them with guilt or debt, then the trust becomes yours alone, and the final payments stop. Not because I want them punished, but because I want you free. Your name is not an accident. I chose it because it means a promise I made to myself, that you would not be diminished. I am sorry I am not there to hold you. I am sorry you will have questions I cannot answer out loud. I am sorry for the loneliness you may have felt even in a full house, but I am proud of you already. Because if you are reading this, you survived. You became. Be gentle with yourself, Marlowe. Do not beg for love from people who only understand control. Do not confuse endurance with loyalty. And when you walk away without apology. You do not owe anyone your life. Love always. Catherine, my throat tightened so hard it hurt. My eyes blurred until the words melted into gray. I pressed the paper to my chest like it could stitch something inside me back together. Sterling didn't speak. He just let the silence hold me. Outside the windshield, I could still see Griffin and Rhiannon on the sidewalk, arguing with each other now, hands flying. Holland hovered near them like she didn't know which side would keep feeding her. The police car finally rolled up, lights washing over the scene. Not sirens, just presence. A uniform stepped out and spoke with Reed, who handed over documents with the calm of someone who never gets emotional about facts. I watched Griffin point toward my car, pointing at me like I was the criminal. Rhiannon clutched her chest like she was fainting. Holland tried to speak and got waved back by the officer. I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. Sterling's voice was quiet behind me. "The trust is substantial," he said gently. "But more important, it contains records, every payment, every signed receipt, every condition they agreed to, it's all there." I swallowed hard. So they knew the whole time. Sterling paused. Yes, the word yes cracked something in me, but it also healed something, because it confirmed what my heart had been whispering for years. That the emptiness wasn't my fault. That the coldness wasn't because I wasn't enough. It was because they chose not to warm it. Reed came back to the passenger window and tapped lightly. When I rolled it down, his expression was professional, but his eyes were kind. "They've been warned," he said. "They were advised to cease contact tonight. Any further interference becomes harassment. We will file in the morning." I nodded, unable to speak. Sterling leaned forward slightly. "There is one more thing you should know," he said. My pulse jumped. "What?" He hesitated, like he didn't want to pile weight on top of weight. "Catherine also named someone else," he said softly. "A person authorized to meet you once you opened that letter, only if you wanted." My hands tightened on the paper. "Who?" Sterling's voice lowered. "Your father." The word father hit differently than it should have. Not warm, not instant, but real. I stared ahead, breathing slowly, feeling the shape of a new question form in my chest. Not a cliffhanger, not a lure. A simple human need. "Is he a good man?" I whispered. Sterling's answer was quiet and honest. "He has waited a long time, and he did not come tonight because he didn't want to turn your pain into a spectacle. He wanted you to have the truth first." I closed my eyes, letting that sink in. The first man in my life, apparently, who understood that love doesn't demand an audience. When I opened my eyes again, Griffin and Rhiannon were still on the sidewalk, but now they looked smaller. Not because they lost money, because they lost the story. I started my car. Rhiannon saw it and tried to rush forward, but the officer stepped into her path, palm out. Griffin shouted something I couldn't hear through the glass. Holland lifted her phone again, reflexively, but then she hesitated. Maybe she remembered my eyes. Maybe she remembered what it felt like to not be seen. I pulled out of the parking lot without rolling my window down, without one last speech, without begging them to understand. Because Catherine was right. Walking away without apology was its own kind of revenge. I drove to my apartment with the letter on the seat beside me like a heartbeat. Sterling followed behind in his car. Reed's number was in my phone in case anything happened. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone in a fight I didn't start. At home, I locked my door. I made tea I didn't drink. I sat on my couch in the quiet and read the letter again, slower this time, tracing my mother's handwriting with my fingertip like it could connect me to a woman I never got to meet. Around midnight, my phone lit up with missed calls. Griffin, Rhiannon, Holland. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Instead, I opened my settings and changed the contact names. Griffin became Do Not Answer. Rhiannon became Do Not Answer. Holland became Do Not Answer. It was small, petty maybe, but it was mine. The next morning, I showed up at the hospital for my shift like my life wasn't on fire. The ICU was bright and cold and familiar. Vent alarms chimed. A nurse handed me a chart. A patient's oxygen sat stubbornly low, refusing to cooperate, and I did what I always do. I stabilized. Halfway through the shift, my manager called me into her office. She looked uneasy, like she'd been bracing for conflict. "We got an email," she said carefully, "from a man named Griffin Holloway." My heart thudded once. She continued, "He wanted to file a complaint about your character. He attached a video link." I inhaled slowly, feeling the old panic try to climb up my throat. Then I remembered the officer's hand in front of Rhiannon, Reed's calm voice, Sterling's presence, Catherine's ink pressed against my chest. I met my manager's eyes. "I can explain," I said quietly. She studied me for a long moment. Then she shook her head once. "I already watched it," she said. My stomach dropped. And I saw you sit there while people tried to corner you into signing something. I saw you stay calm. I saw you ask the only questions that mattered." She leaned back. "If anything, it confirmed you're exactly who I thought you were." My breath hitched. She slid a document across her desk. "The supervisor role we talked about," she said. "It's yours, effective next pay period." I stared at the paper like it might vanish. "Why?" "Because you're steady under pressure," she said simply. "And because whoever tried to smear you just showed me you have dignity." I walked out of her office with the offer letter in my hands, and a strange, quiet warmth spreading through my chest. Not because I won, because I was finally done, losing to people who needed me small. 2 weeks later, Reed filed the paperwork. The Holloways were investigated for financial misconduct tied to the guardianship payments. The trust was secured in my name alone, with protections so tight Griffin couldn't charm his way around them. A formal no-contact order followed after Rhiannon showed up at my job and tried to corner me in the parking garage, crying and screaming in the same breath. Holland sent one message. "You ruined everything." I stared at it for a full minute. Then I deleted it, because nothing I did ruined them. They ruined themselves the moment they decided love was something to invoice. On my first day in my new role, I wore my scrubs, clipped my badge on, and walked the unit like I belonged there, because I did. That night, after shift, I went home, pinned Catherine's letter inside a simple frame, and set it on my kitchen counter where I could see it every morning. A few days later, Sterling called and asked if I was ready to meet the man who had been waiting outside my life, quietly, for 30 years. I said yes, and when I walked into that small coffee shop and saw him stand up with trembling hands and eyes that looked like mine, I realized my birthday party wasn't the day my family broke me. It was the day the truth finally found me.